What would you do if the sanctuary you built with your own hands, a place meant to be your final fortress against a collapsing world, was suddenly inspected by the very people who witnessed your fall from corporate grace? Would you stand tall? Or would the shame of your new, humble life shatter the facade you've worked so hard to maintain? The sun beats down on the valley, an unforgiving, blistering heat that turns the farmhouse construction site into a furnace. Jack stands amidst the scattered timber, his muscles burning from the relentless pace of the build. Above him, the crew is racing against the clock, trying to tile the roof before the dark, heavy clouds of the looming rainy season break. This isn't just a house. It's a desperate, final attempt to provide a home for a mother who has already lost too much. But as the neighbors arrive, whispering and curious, Jack realizes that his past as a CEO hasn't just followed him here, it's watching him, waiting for him to break. Everyone, focus. We need to finish this kitchen today, Jack shouts, his voice raw. He isn't barking orders like a boss in a boardroom. He's pleading like a man whose entire future rests on these wooden pillars. Tu Tien moves through the site like a grounding force. She isn't bothered by the heat or the biting dust of the construction. She slips away to the creek, her hands busy with the wild harvest. She finds bamboo shoots, thick and firm, and gathers the golden lytieuca fruit from the trees. She works with a rhythmic, meditative grace, turning the raw bounty of the mountain into something that feels like home. She knows the secret that the true wealth of their new life isn't found in the bank accounts they lost, but in the jar of pickled bamboo and the strength of the home they are raising from the dirt. As the morning wears on, the atmosphere on the site shifts. The workers are sweating, their faces etched with the fatigue of the midday sun. Tu Tien arrives with a refreshing surprise cold, crisp watermelon. She cuts it with a practiced hand, offering it to the men with a warmth that makes them forget their exhaustion. "You've all worked so hard," she says, her smile genuine. "If we finish today, it's a victory for all of us." Just then, Mr. Dung appears. He's a respected elder of the farming community, a man who knows the weight of the land. He walks slowly, his eyes scanning the structure, his silence more intimidating than any direct question. Jack greets him, not with the arrogance of his former status, but with the weary humility of a man who has learned the hard way that status is fleeting. "I heard you sold the big farm and started over here, Mr. Fame," Dung says, his voice flat, unreadable. Jack leads him into the heart of the house, showing him the sturdy Trochi wood columns. "I didn't sell it because I wanted to, Mr. Dung. I sold it because I had to. My family fell on hard times. I needed to move my mother somewhere she would be safe, somewhere that wouldn't drown when the rainy season hit. This isn't a retreat, it's a promise, Mr." Dung reaches out, his rough hand tracing the grain of the wood. The skepticism in his expression begins to thaw. He isn't looking at a failed CEO anymore. He's looking at a son protecting his own. "It's good timber," the old man admits, his tone softening. "It'll hold. You've got a good heart, Jack. You've been through the ringer. But you're building something real now." The tension in the air breaks. It's a small victory, but it's the only one that matters. Tu Tien joins them, offering tea and the slices of fruit she worked so hard to prepare. She tells the old man about her daily life, about the small market stalls, and the quiet, simple joy of tending to the garden. She doesn't speak of the city or the business deals that failed. She speaks of the life they are cultivating right here, in the shadow of the mountains. As the afternoon light fades into a bruised golden glow, the final tiles are laid. The kitchen is complete. Jack stands back, looking at the house that he nearly died for, the house that cost him his pride but gave him back his purpose. He walks over to Tu Tien, who is busy cleaning the kitchen, her movements still as steady as a heartbeat. "They finished," Jack whispers. He looks at her, And for the first time in months, the weight on his shoulders seems lighter. He remembers the cold, damp nights in the barn, the fear of the unknown, the whispers behind his back. All of it led here. Tomorrow, we start dawning a new era. We bring Mom home. Tu Tien stops her work and looks at him. We did it, Jack. We're finally here. But as the silence of the evening settles over the farm, the peace is interrupted by the distant, thunderous roll of the coming storm. The sky is dark, the air cold, and the reality of their situation snaps back into focus. They have the house, but they have to keep it standing. They have the kitchen, but they have to fill it. They have the mother, but they have to protect her. Jack walks to the edge of the porch, looking out into the pitch-black void of the valley. He knows that the neighbors are watching, that the storm is coming, and that the financial pressure hasn't completely vanished. But as he feels Tu Tien's hand slip into his, he realizes he isn't afraid of the future anymore. He isn't the man who was defined by a company. He is a man defined by the house he built, the woman who stood by him in the mud, and the mother he is fighting to save. They go inside, the door clicking shut against the rising wind. They light a single candle, the flame dancing against the new, unfinished walls. It's a small, flickering light in the vast, indifferent darkness of the forest, but it is theirs. They sit together, the smell of wood smoke and pickled bamboo filling the air, a scent that has become the signature of their salvation. They talk late into the night, their voices low, weaving plans for the garden, for the winter, for the day they finally bring their mother home. They don't speak of the CEO life, the business cards, or the boardrooms. Those are ghosts, lingering at the edge of the property, unable to cross the threshold. Here, in the kitchen of their own making, they are immune to the noise. Jack wakes before dawn the next day, the air crisp and biting. He walks outside, his boots sinking into the wet, turned earth. He finds the bamboo thicket he was working on, the shoots still firm, still promising. He looks at the farmhouse, its silhouette strong against the gray, breaking light. It survived the night. It survived the storm. He heads back inside, finding Tu Tien already awake, the stove lit and the kettle whistling. It's a sound that marks the beginning of their new reality, not a life of power, but a life of presence. He walks up behind her, holding her close, his chin resting on her shoulder as he watches the mist clear from the mountain peaks. "Do you ever miss it?" he asks, his voice barely a whisper. "The noise? The money? The life we had?" Tu Tien turns in his arms, her eyes clear, reflecting the early morning light. "I miss the person you were becoming, not the life we had. You're finally breathing, Jack. That's worth more than all the corporate titles in the world." He knows she's right. He lets out a breath he feels he's been holding for years. He looks at the kitchen, the fruits of their labor, the resilience of their bond. He knows that the challenge isn't over. There will be more storms, more debts, more neighbors watching, more winters to endure, but he also knows they are no longer broken. They are forged. He steps out onto the porch again, just as the sun breaks over the ridge, turning the valley into a sea of gold. He sees the neighbors out in their own fields, working their own land. He waves, and this time, when they wave back, it feels different. It's not the wave of someone watching a man go down. It's the wave of a neighbor recognizing a man who has managed to stand back up. He walks over to the garden, checking the progress of the vegetables. Everything is growing. Everything is reaching for the light. He spends the morning working the soil, the familiar, grounding ache in his hands telling him he is alive. He isn't managing assets anymore. He is managing a life. By midday, Tu Tien calls him for lunch. They eat in the silence of the kitchen, the simple, honest food tasting like victory. They share the pickled bamboo, the spice biting and sharp, the perfect match for the exhaustion in their bones. They don't need to talk. The silence is no longer heavy with secrets. It is full of promise. As they finish, they hear the sound of a vehicle grinding up the steep gravel track leading to the gate. It's not the truck of a neighbor, and it's not the delivery van they've been waiting for. It's a car they don't recognize, a sleek, dark sedan that looks completely out of place in the rugged landscape of their farm. Jack stands up, his heartbeat quickening. He feels the old, familiar panic, the phantom itch of a boardroom suit, the dread of a corporate audit, the fear that the past hasn't actually stayed in the past. He glances at Tu Tien. Her expression is guarded, her hand instinctively gripping the edge of the wooden table. "Stay here," Jack says, his voice low and firm. He walks to the door, stepping out into the blinding midday sun. The driver's door opens, and a man steps out, not an executive, not an official, but someone Jack thought he would never see again. It's his old business partner, the man who stood by him when the company first started, and the man who vanished when the lawsuits began. "Jack," the man says, his voice strained. "We need to talk." Jack freezes. The farmhouse behind him, the kitchen he built, the peace he just reclaimed, all of it feels fragile, like a house of cards waiting for the wind to knock it down. He looks at the man, then back at the door where Tu Tien is watching, her eyes full of quiet, fierce courage. He knows that whatever this man has to say, it will change everything. He knows that the past has finally caught up, and he is going to have to make a choice between the life he is building and the ghosts he tried to outrun. He takes a deep breath, the mountain air filling his lungs, sharpening his senses. He walks toward the man, his footsteps steady, his resolve hard. He isn't a CEO. He isn't a failure. He is a man who knows what he has to lose, and he will fight, with everything he has, to keep it. The camera lingers on his face, the transition from the man who was running to the man who is standing still. The music swells, a low, pulsing beat that raises the tension to a breaking point. What will Jack say? What is the secret that this man carries? And will the new life they have built be enough to withstand the truth that is about to be revealed? The scene cuts to black, leaving the audience hanging on the edge of the confrontation, the stakes higher than they have ever been. The silence that follows is deafening, a vacuum where the future is about to be decided, not in a glass-walled office, but on a patch of dirt in front of the house that proved love is stronger than loss. The story of Jack and Tu Tien is far from over. It is only beginning to get real. As the dust settles around the dark sedan, the audience is left with one lingering, burning question. In a world where your past is your shadow, can you ever truly move on? Or is some ground simply meant to be broken? The answers are coming, and they will be as sharp, as biting, and as necessary as the pickled bamboo they shared at the table. Stay tuned, because the next chapter isn't just about building a house, it's about deciding who you are when everything you once were has been stripped away. The journey, the pain, the triumph, it's all leading here. The storm hasn't passed, it's only gathering, and in the heart of that storm, Jack and Tu Tien will either shatter or they will shine. The choice is theirs, and the world is watching. The farmhouse stands, the wind howls, and the past has finally arrived to ask its price. How much is a new life really worth? The answer is waiting in the truth, and Jack is ready to face it. He stands his ground, the sun behind him, the dark sedan in front of him, and the life he built standing firm at his back. He isn't running anymore. He isn't hiding. He is here, and he is ready. The confrontation is inevitable. The truth is unavoidable, and the resolution will be written in the sweat and blood of the man who finally learned what it means to be home. The screen fades, the tension lingers, and the promise of the next episode burns like the fire in their hearth. The story of their life is not a summary, it is a testament, and it is ready to be told. The final act begins now, and the world will never be the same. The house stands as a lighthouse in the dark. The couple stands as a shield against the past, and the truth stands as the final test of their devotion. Will they stay together, Will they survive? The answer is only a heartbeat away, in the quiet, golden, terrifying, and beautiful peace of the home they have finally, against every odd, truly created. They have won the first battle, but the war for their life is only just starting, and they are, at long last, prepared to face the fire. The journey continues, the bond holds, and the story grows, deeper, darker, and more meaningful with every single breath they take. They are ready, they are ready, they are ready.